Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we're climbing far up, higher than the tree, above where goats get lazy and eagles start giving you side-eye. You're waking in a stone room, its walls cold but clean, its air so thin your thoughts float a little. Outside, prayer flags crack softly in the early wind, and somewhere nearby, a bell is already humming its morning note. Not the big gong, no, this is something smaller, sharper. It sounds like a spoon tapping the rim of an old bronze bowl. And you, lucky traveler, are here to find out why your breakfast rings like a bell. You're spending a day, or perhaps a lifetime, in a Tibetan monastery. This one's remote, built into the slope of a mountain, so steep the stairs feel like an act of faith. The hallways are dim, the incense is cedar-heavy, and the monks glide past you with the practiced slowness of people who've decided rushing is for reincarnated squirrels. Everything here is deliberate. Every gesture contains meaning. Even soup. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bell you just heard? It wasn't rung to call you to prayer. It was rung to announce that breakfast, lentil soup with a bit of barley, is ready. You shuffle barefoot to the dining hall with a dozen other initiates. Each of you carries a simple bowl, brass perhaps, or bronze. It's heavy and faintly dented from years of use. It feels ordinary in your hands, until the monk beside you runs a wooden stick around its rim. It sings, not loudly, just a soft, long, shimmering tone, like the note you almost hear in your dreams. And now you're curious. You try it too. A slow, steady motion with your spoon's edge, not banging but coaxing. And your bowl hums, just for a second, and then fades. You glance around. No one reacts, not because it isn't interesting, but because to them it is breakfast. This is the world you're in now, a world where the line between food and sound has never been particularly clear, where monks who spend their days chanting mantras in deep, resonant tones might, just might, have invented something strange and wonderful by accident. A musical instrument, a meditation aid, a soup bowl. The object we now call a singing bowl likely started as just that, a vessel for food or water. But over generations of handling, clinking, and curious stirring, someone noticed that under the right conditions, the bowl sings. And in a culture where vibration is considered part of healing, clarity, and even cosmic understanding, that little hum didn't go unnoticed. You take your seat now, your bowl resting on the floor in front of you. You'll eat in silence, not as a punishment, but as a form of gratitude. With each bite, the bowl warms in your hand. And when you're done, when the last lentil has been coaxed from its curved edge, you lift the bowl once more. Not to eat, to listen. You run your spoon, gently around the rim. The bowl hums again. And this time, you hear it differently. Not as an accident, but as a conversation. Between silence and sound. Between nourishment and meditation. Between soup and song. Section 2. The morning deepens. Sunlight reaches its fingers into the courtyard, brushing prayer flags and waking up the stones. Your legs are still stiff from sleep, or possibly from last night's long seated chanting, but the thin mountain air and the rhythmic clang of a distant hammer say one thing clearly: the monastery is awake. And so are its needs. Your first job today is not prayer, not study, not sweeping the meditation hall in concentric circles until your knees quietly revolt. No, today you're assigned to the kitchen, which in this place is less a room and more a ritual space, a half-open courtyard with a blackened clay stove, shelves lined with worn copper pots, and bowls stacked in neat pyramids. Some are small, some large. All of them ring when you bump them by accident. It's not magic, it's metallurgy. At 12,000 feet above sea level, almost everything behaves differently. Water boils sooner, fires burn lazier, and metal, heated and hammered here, carries an odd tension in its skin. Not just for tools, not just for coins, but for bowls, especially bowls. The old monk at the forge, he has no name, not that he gives you, but his robe is patched in more places than not, and he smells faintly of iron and yak butter. He doesn't speak. He simply gestures for you to pick up a stack of bowls and follow him. He walks slowly, back bent, one hand always brushing the stone walls as if counting his way by memory. You follow him to the forge's edge. It's quiet, just a low flame, a bellows, a pile of raw metal bars. Copper mostly, some tin. Occasionally, something shinier. Silver. Unlikely. Meteorite fragments. Probably not, but local stories love a good stargazer twist. He picks up a bowl from the cooling shelf, holds it toward you. You take it. It's warm, almost hot. He taps the rim gently with a stick. It rings. A clear, clean note. Then another. He nods. Approving, perhaps, or simply moving to the next step. You've heard monks say that each bowl has a voice, a natural pitch shaped not just by size and thickness, but by intention. Not in the mystical sense, necessarily, but in the way metal, shaped by steady hands and fired at high altitude, remembers. These bowls aren't mass-produced. They're hand-forged, hand-tuned, often over the span of days. And originally, they were made for eating. Practical. Durable. Heat-friendly. But in the kitchen's constant collision of ladles and lips and long wooden spoons, someone heard something more. A ringing that lingered. At high altitudes, with little to do during fasting seasons, even the smallest sound becomes noticeable. A bell left to hang too long. A bowl set down just so. A stirring motion that accidentally caught the bowl's edge. These weren't concert halls. These were kitchens. But they were monastic kitchens, where silence is sacred and every noise becomes a lesson. So when a bowl began to sing, someone listened. Maybe it was a cook. Maybe it was a novitiate too curious for his own good. Maybe it was someone just bored during winter stew prep. But from that moment onward, bowls were tested not just for volume, but for voice. You try now, just for fun. You take a ladle, gently run it around the inside of one of the bowls. Not scraping, but coaxing. And yes, it hums. Not long, not loud, but just enough to make the air feel different. The old monk hears it. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't stop you either. And in a place where silence is scripture, that's the loudest approval you'll ever get. Section 3. The day continues its slow ascent. The air, crisp in the morning, warms just enough to make your breath less visible and your hands a little less reluctant. You've left the forge, but the sound of metal on stone follows you like an echo, as if the bowls themselves are humming faintly in your memory. Now you're in the main kitchen. Not the place where bowls are made, but where they matter. Here, long tables are lined with baskets of lentils, trays of chopped tubers, and enormous clay pots steaming with barley broth. The scent is earthy, savory, and undeniably comforting. You're stationed near the soup fire. Your job is humble but essential. Stirring. Not stirring the pot exactly, but stirring the bowl, one of the older ones. Thick-walled, hand-forged, and worn smooth from decades of use. It's being used to mix a thick mash of root vegetables and salt. You take up a ladle. Not the usual kind. This one is rounded, carved from dense wood, polished to a soft shine from generations of hands. You place it gently against the inside of the bowl. And then, without meaning to, you stir in a circle. And the bowl rings. It isn't a clang, not even a clink, just a low, shimmering tone that lingers like breath on cold glass. You pause. The kitchen is busy, but no one seems surprised. A few other monks nearby are doing the same, mixing with slow, deliberate circles, their bowls murmuring quietly to themselves. You do it again, slower this time. The sound lasts longer. There's a moment when the stir becomes a tone, when movement turns into music, and it doesn't come from pressure, it comes from patience. The vibration starts in your wrist, but ends somewhere in your chest. Historians still argue whether this was intended. Did monks design the singing bowl? Or did it emerge, slowly, from centuries of communal meals, repetitive motions, and a culture that listens closely? Maybe it was the acoustics. These monasteries were built with echo in mind, so that chants would fill the air without amplification. Maybe the architecture helped certain notes stretch longer. Maybe certain bowls just happened to hum louder, and people noticed. Or maybe, as some more mystical-minded monks suggest, the bowls began to sing in response to the monks' own chanting. It's not that far-fetched, really. Tibetan chant is deep, resonant, often performed in low, vibrating tones. Entire rooms have been designed to amplify that vocal resonance. And if you place a bowl nearby, some claim it begins to tremble, vibrating sympathetically, like a tuning fork catching the hum of a distant drum. You stir again, slower now, and again the sound returns. Not loud, not theatrical, just present, as if the bowl is listening and then responding. You glance around. One older monk, sitting near the far hearth, is using his stick not to stir, but to circle the rim of his bowl. And even without soup inside, it sings. A higher note than yours. Clearer. He looks up and meets your eye. Then, very quietly, he tips the bowl towards you like a toast, and continues circling. So you keep stirring, not for the food, but for the note, because in this monastery, the difference between a meal and a meditation might just be sound. Section 4. The afternoon settles in like a cat, quiet, warm, and slightly heavier than expected. You finish your shift in the kitchen, and now you're drifting through the back courtyard of the monastery, where sunlight catches on pale prayer flags and low stone benches wait in the shade of whispering pines. And you're still thinking about soup, more specifically, about the bowls that hold it and how they sing. Let's say you're a curious monk, sometime in the 14th century, deep in the Himalayan plateau, where there are no clocks, no timetables, and time is something you measure by the length of chants or the steam off a lentil stew. You've got a bowl in front of you. It's thick, slightly dented. You've just finished eating. It's warm in your hands, and you're not quite ready to move. So, you pick up a stick, maybe a worn stirring spoon, and you run it gently along the rim. The bowl hums, and now you're curious. You try again, faster, slower. You notice that pressure changes the pitch slightly, that different bowls produce different tones, that a dry bowl sings more clearly than a wet one, that metal reacts differently to temperature, to handling, even to your breath. You try tapping, too, gently at first, then circling again, and maybe you start comparing. Which bowls hum longer? Which vibrate more in the hand? You wouldn't be the first to notice. Tibetan monks have always observed more than they interfere. A small change in rhythm, a quiet tone caught in a silent hall, these things don't go ignored. They go studied, and so begins the experiment, not in a lab, not with scrolls of notes or diagrams, but through repetition, observation, daily practice. Bowls were already integral to monastic life. Each monk had their own. Meals were served communally, but eaten individually. The bowl wasn't just a dish. It was a symbol of simplicity, of self-sufficiency, of spiritual containment. So why wouldn't it also be a source of sound? The overlap is too perfect to be accidental. A culture obsessed with resonance, both vocal and metaphysical, stumbles upon an object that hums when treated gently. In a place where silence is sacred and vibration is prayer, a singing bowl becomes inevitable. By now, you found a bench. You're holding an old bowl borrowed from the kitchen. It's not perfectly round. There's a nick along one edge. But when you circle the rim with a stick, gently, it begins to sing again. This time, you close your eyes. The sound is steady, not a melody, just one pure note, stretching like a thread pulled taut across your thoughts. A few other monks are nearby. Some are meditating. One is sketching geometric shapes in the dirt with a stick. Another naps under a shawl, snoring softly. And the bowl keeps humming. This is how it begins. Not with fanfare, not with discovery, but with a quiet realization that a bowl is not just a container for food. It's a container for stillness. And when you coax it to sing, you're not just making music. You're making space. Section 5. Later in the day, you find yourself in the monastery storage room. Not a glamorous destination, but a fascinating one. It's a cool, shadowy space tucked behind the kitchen, filled with shelves that sag under the weight of decades. Maybe centuries. Burlap sacks of barley line the lower racks. Jars of dried roots crowd the middle shelves. And on the upper tiers, bowls. Stacks and stacks of them. Not matching. Not mass-produced. Each one slightly different. Some wide and shallow, others deep like cauldrons. They're scratched, dented, hand-hammered, and many still bear the faint echo of polish along their rims. And more than a few show evidence of having once, just maybe, been sung. You pull one down carefully. The weight is familiar now. The way it catches the light suggests it's made of bronze, but with streaks of something silvery in the mix. Tin, maybe, or something rarer. You've heard whispers of the 7 metal bowls. Part myth, part metallurgy, part monkish mystery. Supposedly, the most prized singing bowls were forged from a specific alloy, a blend of 7 sacred metals, each representing a celestial body: gold for the sun, silver for the moon, iron for Mars, mercury for Mercury, tin for Jupiter, copper for Venus, and lead for Saturn. The recipe? Highly debated. The proportions? Lost to time, or more likely, to enthusiastic traders who added a few extra legends for spice. But there's some truth to it. Certain bowls do sound richer, deeper, more complex, and those often trace back to regions known for complex alloying techniques. In the corner of a storage room is a bin marked with a wax seal, faded now but still legible. It says damage, do not use. You peek inside and find bowls with hairline cracks, small chips, warped rims. Even broken, they're beautiful. One has a note tied to it in faded ink. Still sings in the rain. You pick it up, run your finger around the rim. It doesn't ring like the others, but it hums, just faintly, at the very edge of silence. And you realize these bowls aren't discarded because they stopped working. They're here because they changed. Like monks themselves, maybe. Retired, respected, still resonating, if only softly. You return to the main kitchen, carrying one of the better preserved examples. The cook raises an eyebrow. That one's old, he says, not unkindly. Pre-famine, maybe. From when the barley still came up the valley by yak cart. You nod. Set it down. Stir some lentils. Later, a young monk walks by, dragging his knuckles on a row of bowls like a child brushing past a xylophone. One of them sings back. Briefly. Brightly. He freezes, then grins, and runs off. You can't help but smile. That's how it starts. That's how it always starts. Not with a chant. Not with a ceremony. Just a sound. And the simple, irresistible human instinct to repeat it. To listen. To wonder. And so, deep in the shadowed room of sacred soupware and sonic relics, the story of the singing bowl keeps ringing on. Section 6. Dusk arrives like a whisper. The sky above the monastery bleeds slowly from sapphire to plum, then settles into that deep, velvety blue where shadows stretch long and the mountains start to fade into the idea of mountains. The air is cooler now. You can feel the chill through your robe. It makes your fingers curl a little tighter around the bowl you've brought with you. Evening bell rings, low, deliberate, drawn out. Not a singing bowl this time, but a proper temple bell, suspended from a thick wooden beam in the prayer courtyard. The sound rolls through the air like slow thunder wrapped in honey. You follow the others into the chanting hall, bowl still in hand. It's customary here. Each monk carries their own, polished before entry, held quietly in their lap during evening prayers. Not because you'll eat again, dinner's over, but because the bowl is part of the ritual, a reminder of simplicity, of nourishment, of the self as a container of both sound and stillness. You sit on your cushion. The chanting begins. It starts with a single voice, deep, monotone, not quite melodic but resonant. Then a second joins. Then 5. Then 20. The room hums, not loudly, but thickly, like the walls are soaked in old sound. You feel your bowl vibrate faintly against your thighs. You haven't touched it, but it hears the chanting, responds to it. That's not mysticism. That's physics. Vibration begets vibration. The low frequencies of the monks' throats set the air trembling, and the air sets the bowl trembling, and the bowl hums back. A quiet agreement between voice and vessel. You close your eyes. You don't chant, not yet, but you listen. And the longer you sit, the more you notice that each monk has a different tone. Some are gravel deep, others reed thin. Some hum like bees, others drone like distant horns. And when they stop, suddenly, all at once, it's like a rug pulled out from under your ears. Silence slams down. Except for the bowls. Some are still singing. Just faintly. Just for a moment longer. That's the beauty of it. Bowls remember. Sound leaves fingerprints. And in the stillness, you can almost hear the imprint of every voice that came before yours. After the chant, you're allowed to use your bowl just once. One tone. A closing note. Each monk, in turn, circles the rim of their bowl with a padded stick. Not to show off, not to compete, but to offer a sound, a signature. Yours is lower than you expected. It hums through your palms, into your elbows. You feel it in your spine. The monk beside you nods. Approval, maybe, or understanding. You place the bowl back on the mat. And now the ceremony ends. No clapping, no announcement, just the slow shuffle of robes and bare feet across stone. The bowls are returned to their shelves. The hall darkens, and outside, the wind picks up again. You stand at the edge of the courtyard now, looking up at the stars as they begin to crowd into the sky. Behind you, the final bowls still hum quietly on their wooden racks. A sound not meant for performance, but for memory. You touch your bowl one last time. It's silent now, but you know it isn't empty. Not anymore. Section 7. Dawn again. You're waking early, before the bell, before the steam of the barley pot, before even the birds seem convinced the sun is returning. Your breath puffs faint clouds in the crisp morning air, and the silence is so complete, it's almost a sound of its own. You slip on your robe, quietly, careful not to wake the other novices. You pick up your bowl, not for food, not yet, and step out into the courtyard. The stones are cold underfoot. The sky is still more shadow than color. You sit near the edge of the flagstone path, bowl in lap. In this monastery, mornings begin not with eating, but with hearing. You've been told, by a monk too old for stairs but still sharp as hot ginger tea, that before there were clocks, there were echoes. That monks measured time by the fading of a bell. That the first bell was not struck by hand, but by sound. A single bowl, filled with nothing but mountain air, was tapped softly and left to sing. The moment the sound died completely, that's when the day began. You try it now. You take your padded stick, the one you were given on your first day, carved from pine, slightly warped from use, and circle the bowl's rim. Slow, even. The sound starts as a shimmer, barely there, then grows. It's a gentle tone, like a whisper held between two fingers. You stop, let it fade, and then you wait. You listen, not for the sound itself, but for the space it leaves behind. There's a strange sensation that follows the after-echo. Not a real sound, not anymore, but your ears still reaching, still expecting, still holding a shape that's already gone. That's the point. The monks say that sound lingers not in the air, but in you. That the bowl teaches patience. That listening to a note fade is like watching your own thoughts dissolve. First loud, then softer still, then nothing. But not empty. Clear. You try it again. This time, you keep your eyes closed. You let the note wash over your shoulders, your spine, your jaw. And when it fades again, something in you relaxes. Not everything, of course. Your knees still ache. Your back still wishes it were 200 years younger. But your mind is still. Just for a moment. That's the secret of the morning bowl ritual. It's not about the bowl. It's not even about the sound. It's about the fade. The part where something ends and you let it go. Later, when the bell rings for real, struck hard and long and low, you'll join the others in the hall for breakfast. You'll eat barley and greens and laugh, quietly, when someone spills lentils on their robe and pretends it's part of a spiritual test. But for now, you sit with your bowl, and the sound it used to make. Section 8. Breakfast is over, and the monastery exhales. The rhythm of the day slows now, shifting from meals and meditation into the long stretch of morning study. But you're not in the scriptorium today, nor the teaching hall where monks chant sutras in unison while the youngest scribes try not to fall asleep mid-recitation. No, today you're on bull duty. This means cleaning, not just any cleaning, monastic cleaning, which is to say, precise, respectful, and above all slow. You find yourself in a long, open corridor lined with wooden racks. Each one holds dozens of bowls, some shallow, some deep, all dulled slightly by use but still faintly luminous in the morning light. A small stream runs through a carved stone channel along the wall, icy cold and clear. You take a cloth, wool, softened by many washes, and dip it lightly into the stream. The first bowl you pick up is dusty with barley residue. You turn it in your hands. It's a good bowl, heavy, evenly shaped with a thick rim. Not showy, just quietly competent. You begin to scrub, not with force, not with urgency, gently, as if the bowl might feel shame. You rinse, circle, pat dry, and when you finish, you set it on the drying rack upside down. This is important. Monks here believe that bowls hold memory, that each meal, each vibration leaves a trace. When you clean a bowl, you're not erasing, it's more like turning the page. And placing the bowl upside down signals a pause, a rest, a moment where the bowl is not for eating or for sound, but simply for being. You continue this process. Another bowl, then another. Each one has a different weight, a different feel. Some are smooth, others are dented. One has a scratch that looks vaguely like a rabbit. Another hums softly when you tap it dry, as if it's eager to return to service. And with each bowl, your own thoughts settle. You stop wondering what time it is. You stop thinking about lunch. You even forget, briefly, that you're not a monk. You're just a pair of hands, helping things be clean. Some scholars suggest that this cleaning ritual is when monks first began to notice the unique sonic qualities of certain bowls. That in washing, drying, and stacking, often with nothing but water and wind for company, they heard patterns emerge. Certain bowls rang louder when set down. Some vibrated longer. Others changed tone entirely depending on where they were placed. One theory even suggests that a monk discovered the singing effect not while eating, but while polishing, his cloth catching the rim at just the right speed, the friction creating a tone that startled him into stillness. You finish your 12th bowl. It's smaller than the others, lighter. You can hold it easily in one hand. You give it a quick swipe with the cloth. Then, on a whim, circle its rim with your finger just once. It sings. A high, pure tone, quick to fade. You look around. No one notices. Or if they do, they're polite enough to pretend they don't. You smile. Just slightly. Because now you know the secret too. Even cleaning can reveal music. Even stillness can ring. Section 9. The sun is higher now, cresting the eastern ridge and flooding the monastery in gold. You finish bowl duty, and your hands are still warm from the cloth, your fingers pruned faintly from hours of mindful scrubbing. You step outside for air, real, crisp air laced with pine resin and dry stone and something faintly metallic that might just be memory. You're not the only one escaping study. In the far end of the courtyard, a few younger monks are gathered around a stack of bowls, whispering and laughing softly. You drift closer. They're playing a game. One monk picks a bowl from the pile, circles it with a stick, and the others try to guess the pitch. D, one says. No, closer to C sharp, insists another. A third monk hums the note back, eyes closed in concentration. You sit nearby, uninvited but welcome. This isn't formal practice. It's something between meditation and mischief, a way to test ears, to train focus, to sneak music into the cracks of discipline. These aren't trained musicians, but they listen more closely than most singers. Because here, a bowl's sound isn't decoration. It's data. They pass the stick to you. A silent challenge. You pick a bowl, medium-sized, dark patina, balanced in your hand like a sleeping cat. You circle slowly. The tone blooms. Low, steady, surprisingly resonant. Be flat, says one. Be natural, counters another. You have no idea, but you nod like you agree. The game goes on. And through it, you learn something else. Certain monks have favorite bowls. Not assigned, not formal, but known. That one prefers a bowl with a wide lip. Another always finds the deepest resonance in slightly dented ones. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. It's like people and their mugs, or teacups, or pens. We're drawn to the tools that sound most like us. Eventually, an older monk steps in, not to stop the game, but to refine it. He lines up 5 bowls of varying sizes and tones. Then he hums a 5-note melody. Soft, slow, the kind of tune that's not a song exactly, but feels remembered anyway. And then he plays it back, with the bowls, tapping each one gently with his ring finger. The notes are not perfect. They don't shimmer like flutes or resonate like gongs, but they belong. The melody lives inside the metal, waiting to be woken. You listen, transfixed, because now the game has become something else. A performance, a memory, a language of bowls. Historians who study early Buddhist acoustics often debate how intentional this musical development was. Did the monks mean to create instruments, or did they simply live so attentively that music emerged naturally from their tools? They still argue. But here, on this mountain, under the sun, with this circle of monks smiling into the sound, there's no debate. The bowl was always meant to sing. It just needed someone willing to listen. Section 10. Later that day, just before the sun begins to dip, you're invited to observe something unusual. Not a ritual, not a lesson, not a chant. A test, an experiment, if you will. The old monk with the fire-scorched robe, the one you've come to think of as the bowl whisperer, has selected a group of students and handed each a different bowl and a different kind of stick. Not one is made of metal. There's a strip of bamboo, a carved bone, a wide-bladed spoon, a length of twisted vine, and something that looks suspiciously like a very old paintbrush handle. The challenge: to play the bowl using only what you're given. No tapping, no striking, only circling. The goal is vibration. You watch as they begin, some with confidence, others with hesitance. The bamboo produces a sharp, quick tone. The bone, deeper, gravelly. The vine barely works at all. It slips inconsistent, like trying to draw music from a snake. The paintbrush handle surprises everyone. Soft, breathy, almost like a wooden whisper. And here, again, you begin to see how technique evolved. This isn't just about hitting things until they chime. It's about coaxing sound, encouraging vibration. The monks didn't invent singing bowls in one flash of inspiration. They arrived at them slowly, by trying, failing, listening, adjusting. Some think this technique, the now iconic circular movement, may have its roots in food. Imagine a cold morning, a thick barley porridge congealing in the bottom of a too-wide bowl. You stir, slowly, to reheat it evenly. The spoon scrapes the inside. You hear a note. The motion is repeated, again and again, until one day, someone stirs an empty bowl, just to see what happens. Sound, they learned, doesn't always come from force. Sometimes it comes from patience, from rhythm, from touch. One of the monks hands you the vine, challenges you with a nod. You accept. Grip the stick gently. Circle the rim of your own bowl, one you've used all day. At first, nothing. Then a low murmur, a tremble, a breath of tone so soft it barely exists. But it does. It grows. And for just a few seconds, the bowl sings. Everyone pauses, not in surprise, but in appreciation. It's not a competition. It's not even about the sound. It's about the method, the exploration, the discovery of tone in unexpected tools. This is where form becomes function, where kitchen becomes concert hall, where a cooking utensil becomes a mallet, not with ceremony, not with a patent, but with time and repetition and just enough curiosity. So the next time you see a singing bowl resting silently on a shelf, remember this. It was probably once used for soup. Section 11. Evening comes on thick and sudden, the way it does in high places. 1 minute, you're walking through golden shadows. The next, the sky is ink and the pines have gone quiet. Lanterns are being lit along the walkways of the monastery, small, fluttering pools of warmth suspended from bamboo hooks. The air smells of oil and wood smoke and something faintly medicinal, like dried mint or crushed juniper. You're back in the dining hall, not for food this time, but for a special gathering. Tonight, it's silent supper. No chanting, no speaking, just a room of monks, each with their own bowl, each eating slowly, precisely, with the kind of care normally reserved for writing calligraphy on rice paper. You've been allowed to join. Your bowl is simple, wide, clean, just slightly warm from the rinse water. You ladle in the barley stew, thick tonight, with a few shreds of bitter greens. There's tea, too, dark, earthy, and vaguely smoky, served in chipped cups that sing quietly when set down on the wooden floor. And then the meal begins, not with a signal, but with the absence of sound. No chair scrape, no spoons clatter. Every movement is practiced, intentional. The only noise is the faint, occasional ring of a bowl touched at just the right angle, or the soft breath of someone sitting down too fast. And that's when you notice it. The bowls hum, just faintly, just here and there. a kind of accidental choir, a resonance that hangs between bites. A monk shifts beside you. His bowl, larger than yours, releases a long, slow tone as he brushes it gently with his thumb. He doesn't seem to notice. Or maybe he does, and this is just part of his way. Another monk, across the room, sets his bowl down and it rings slightly against the mat. No one reacts. No one tries to make music, but music happens anyway. This is the forgotten art of resonance dining, a term coined centuries later by a Japanese anthropologist who studied these silent meals and noted the unintentional tones they produced. He called it sonic minimalism, and though most monks laughed at the idea, a few admitted that, yes, sometimes the bowls talk back. Historians still argue whether this silence was intended to enhance mindfulness or whether it just made the soup easier to savor. You take a bite now. It's good, nutty, salty, steaming enough to fog your bowl's rim. You set your spoon down softly, and yes, the bowl sings again. Just a whisper of a tone, barely a shimmer, but it's there. And this, you realize, is not accidental. Because over time, the silence amplifies everything. A breath, a sip, a swallow, a bowl touched by wood. You finish your meal slowly, reverently. You don't even notice when the others start to rise, one by one, carrying their bowls like precious thoughts. You follow. Outside, the stars are out, bright, brash, cold. Your bowl is clean now, tucked under your robe, but your ears are still ringing, and you're not sure if it's the altitude or the memory of a sound that never meant to be music and became it anyway. Section 12. You sleep soundly that night, wrapped in thick wool under stone arches and the occasional creak of roof timbers adjusting to mountain air. There's something about the thinness of oxygen here that makes dreams feel softer, rounder, like pillows you don't quite sink into but drift beside. When you wake, it's still dark, but not silent. A faint humming. Not human. Not wind. A bull. You step into the hallway and follow the sound. It leads you to the back courtyard, where one monk, just one, is already awake, sitting cross-legged in the dark, singing bull before him. He's not chanting, not meditating. He's listening. The bull is ringing. Not loud, not long, but steadily. He lifts a thin stick, circles the bowl again, then stops. It continues to hum. And now, in the silence that follows, he speaks. Did you know, he says softly, not turning to look at you, that some bowls sing longer in the cold? You shake your head. He doesn't mind. He gestures to a small stack of bowls beside him. Different sizes, different alloys. He taps one gently. No stick, just a light finger flick. It rings bright and short. Then he taps another, deeper, wider. This one rings longer, lusher, like a tone folded in velvet. The shape matters, he murmurs, but the air matters more. He hands you a bowl, gestures for you to play it. You try. Your hand is stiff with sleep, but you find the rhythm. The bowl responds, a tone like fog lit from within. Wind, the monk says. Wind decides how long the note stays. He doesn't mean it literally. Or maybe he does. Either way, you're beginning to understand what monks mean when they talk about listening as a spiritual practice. It's not passive. It's not just hearing. It's participating in silence. Historians have long speculated that singing bowls were used as early timekeepers. Not for seconds or minutes, but for states. You played the bowl until its note disappeared, and that became the unit. One bowl fade equals one cycle of breath, or thought, or chant, a natural metronome. Some traditions even claim the length of the bowl's ring reflected the listener's karma. A ridiculous notion, of course, but still, the bowl you're holding does seem to hum a little longer when you're calm. The monk before you has stopped playing. He's simply sitting now, hands on knees, bowl at his side. You place yours gently on the stone. The sound lingers, a whisper of a tone. Then silence. The monk stands, nods. Time to boil the barley. You return to your chamber. Your ears are still ringing, not from noise, but from awareness. Because now you know, a singing bowl is not an instrument. It's a reminder that sound doesn't fill silence. It emerges from it and fades back in, like a tide that only the stillest people can see. Section 13. Mid-morning finds you back in the communal hall, where an odd and wonderful inventory is taking place. Two monks are sorting bowls, not by size, not by tone, but by use. You watch as they create tidy stacks: soup, grain, ritual, and perhaps most mysteriously, unknown but resonant. The line between food bowl and sacred object is, here, thinner than parchment. One of the monks, a stout man with forearms like rolled rugs, gestures for your help. You join them, lifting each bowl, giving it a quick spin with a wooden ring. If it sings low, it goes in one pile. If it chirps high and quick, it's for barley gruel. If it resonates for more than 10 seconds, it's tagged with a red cloth and set aside. That one's for silence breaks, the monk explains, as if that's a normal sentence. You try not to ask what that means. Instead, your hand drifts to a smaller stack nearby, bowls marked with faint red dots near the rim. You lift one. It's light, almost too thin. You run the stick around its edge, expecting a soft ring. Instead, it buzzes. Not violently, not sharp, but with a peculiar shiver, like a cicada trapped under a silk scarf. The monk sees your reaction. Smiles. Children's bowls, he says. You blink. They give these to children? He nods. Tones are softer, shorter, less distracting during study. And now you see it. An entire shelf dedicated to child-size bowls, each tuned to a different pitch. Some are so high they barely register unless you lean in. Others barely resonate at all. But they're here. Used. Respected. It makes sense. In monastic culture, children don't get toy versions of things. They get smaller versions. Still sacred. Still useful. And here's a secret most monks won't admit. Children are better at making bowls sing. Their arms don't tire as fast. Their grip is more relaxed. Their curiosity unfiltered. They experiment. One novice once spun a bowl on the floor like a top and claimed he could hear the stars. He was gently assigned to sweeping duty for a week, but no one told him he was wrong. You help sort for another hour. By now, you've developed preferences. You like the mid-sized bowls, warm, mellow, forgiving. The large ones impress you, but feel too serious. The tiny ones, mischievous, likely to surprise. There's a brief commotion at the far end of the hall. Two novices are arguing over a scratched bowl. One insists it belongs in the grain pile. The other says it's a deep vibration type. A senior monk intervenes. He doesn't check the tone. He flips the bowl and examines the bottom. There, barely visible, is a tiny scratch symbol. 2 waves and a single dot. That's a fasting bowl, he says. Used only during sacred quiet days. He taps it once. The tone is sharp, short, gone in an instant. A reminder, perhaps, that not all bowls are meant to sing long. Some are there to say just this, and no more. And now you realize this is more than just inventory. It's identity. Each bowl carries a history of use, of resonance, of meals and meditations and days both loud and unspeaking. And the monks remember, not with ledgers, but with listening. You leave the hall that day not with a bowl, but with a thought. That objects, like people, hum differently depending on how they're held. Section 14. By late afternoon, the monastery is bathed in amber light, and the air has that sleepy warmth of things winding down. You're sent out with a small group of monks to make a delivery, downhill, through pine groves and goat paths, toward a neighboring village. The cargo, singing bowls, 6 of them, wrapped in cloth, tucked gently into a straw-lined crate, and strapped to the back of a mule who looks deeply unconvinced about the whole endeavor. These are for trade, one monk explains. And for teaching, you raise an eyebrow. They asked for soup bowls, he adds. But they'll learn what they're really getting. The trail winds down the mountain, loose stones clicking under your sandals. As you walk, one of the monks explains that these bowls are part of a long-standing tradition, monasteries gifting bowls to villages as both practical wear and quiet invitation. Most places use them for eating, he says. Then one day, someone stirs too slowly, or sets one down just right, and they hear it. He smiles. That's when the real learning begins. You reach the village near sunset. It's small, just a handful of houses, a low stone wall, and a square where children chase each other with sticks that may or may not be pretending to be horses. The bowls are brought to the community hall, unwrapped with reverence, and set on a woven mat. The elder inspects them, not like a merchant, but like someone meeting old friends. Good edges, he mutters. Thick lips. They'll keep things warm. He taps one. It rings. A child gasps. The elder doesn't react, but you catch a twitch of amusement at the corner of his mouth. Later, over a shared meal, lentils again, always lentils, you hear stories. Of a woman who discovered a cracked bowl could predict the weather. It rang sharper when rain was near. Of a boy who learned to calm goats by singing into a bowl. Of a man who swore his dreams got longer when he drank tea from one. You don't question any of it. Because what you've learned is this: when an object lives in silence long enough, people start hearing what they need. One monk offers to demonstrate. He picks a bowl from the crate, holds it in one palm, and circles the rim slowly with a worn stick. The room falls still. The note rises, clear, unwavering, as steady as breath. Children freeze. Adults lean in. Even the mule seems quieter. And then, at the perfect moment, the monk stops. The note fades gently. And in that silence, the elder finally speaks. These are good bowls, he says. And that's all. You spend the night in the village, lying on a reed mat near the fire, the smell of wood smoke and barley still on your robe. Outside, somewhere in the dark, a bowl rings once, accidental, maybe. Or not. You drift off thinking about how these bowls travel. Not like weapons, not like gold, but like questions, carried softly, until someone listens. Section 15. You're back at the monastery now, saddle sore and sun-pinked, with dust in your ears and something like music stuck in your thoughts. The bowls you helped deliver are long gone, scattered now through village kitchens and children's games and elder-led stories. But their tones linger in your mind like a song you heard once in a dream. Today is quiet, a fast day, no meals, no tasks, just meditation, silence, and an eerie awareness of your own stomach. You're seated in the main hall, legs folded, robe loose. Your bowl rests in front of you, clean, dry, empty. Everyone's bowl is empty today. They gleam faintly in the late morning light, an army of unused instruments waiting for a cue. This is the part of monastic life no one warns you about. The hungry part. You're told fasting purifies, sharpens the spirit, opens the inner ear. That may be true, but mostly it teaches you how loud your own body can be. Every gurgle, every sigh, every accidental creak of a joint becomes a bell of its own. You reach for your bowl, not to eat, but to listen. You don't ring it. You don't touch it. You just sit with it. And you realize for the first time just how full an empty bowl can be. It holds your reflection, your breath, your uneaten thoughts. It reflects back not food, but wanting. And in the stillness, even that becomes a kind of music. You remember something one of the older monks once said: the bowl is always full. Sometimes it just doesn't hold soup. Historians rarely talk about this part of bowl culture. They focus on acoustics, alloys spread across trade routes. But inside monasteries, the bowl's silence matters just as much as its sound. On fast days, bowls are placed in sunlit rows, not for worship, but as companions. Monks sit beside them, meditate beside them, sometimes hum into them just to feel the echo press against their face. Some whisper into them, some cry into them, some fall asleep with their foreheads resting on the rim. Because on days when your body is empty, you start to recognize all the other things that fill you, like memory, or longing, or just the subtle hum of being alive. You try humming now, softly low into the bowl's wide mouth. It doesn't respond, not with sound, but with stillness, and that today is enough. You sit back. The bowl glows faintly in the light, and without ever making a sound, it sings. Section 16. The fast is over. The next morning brings food again, simple, fragrant, and received with a quiet, grateful energy that no feast could ever match. Barley porridge, boiled greens, a chunk of hard bread softened in tea. Your bowl is full once more, but not for long, because today is also cleaning day. Not just the usual wipe and dry. Today is ritual cleaning, the deep cleanse performed once each season, meant to honor the tools of monastic life. Robes are mended, floors are swept with pine boughs, and bowls are washed like sacred texts, You're assigned to the outer courtyard where an enormous copper kettle steams over a wood fire. Buckets of warm, scented water wait beside it, infused with bay leaf, lemon peel, and a pinch of ash. The scent is cleansing, earthy, just this side of herbal tea. The monk in charge hands you a thin cloth and a brush made of woven reeds. He points to the line of bowls set along the stone bench, dozens of them, each with its own quirks, patinas, and whispered histories. You begin with one shaped like a bell turned upside down. Its rim is thicker than most. It has a faint line near the base where the metal changed tone, likely a sign of uneven cooling in the forge. You wet the cloth, wring it, begin the gentle circular motion that defines today's work. This is not scrubbing. This is reverence. The water smells like winter. You work in silence. Each bowl gets the same attention, no matter how plain or prized. Cracks are inspected. Dents are noted. Some bowls have been repaired with tiny stitches of brass, like scars carefully mended. Others bear small carvings on the bottom, a lotus, a wave, a stylized breath. These symbols are never explained. They're not meant to be. One monk nearby is polishing a bowl with such care it looks more like blessing than labor. He hums softly as he works, and now you hear something strange. The clean bowls, stacked nearby, are beginning to ring on their own. Not loudly, just a faint, sympathetic resonance, tones responding to the humming, to the brushing, to the water in the air. It's a subtle chorus. You wouldn't hear it in a market, but here, it's unmistakable. And it grows as the courtyard fills with more cleaned bowls, all resting, gleaming, humming slightly under the hands of monks who have done this hundreds of times. This is not just cleaning. This is retuning. Just as flutes must be adjusted, just as strings must be checked, the singing bowl, used daily, touched by lips and spoons and prayerful fingers, needs to be brought back to silence properly. Some claim a poorly cleaned bowl will stop singing altogether. Others say it will sing the wrong note. No one wants that. So you continue. Cloth, water, breath. And when you finally finish the last one, a large, slightly warped bowl that sings in two tones at once, you set it down beside the others and step back. The courtyard is full now. Rows of bowls, clean and quiet. But if you stand still, if you truly listen, you'll hear it. A whisper of tone, a breath of resonance, as if the bowls themselves are remembering who they are, and thanking you for the reminder. Section 17. This evening, long after the last chant has faded and the prayer lamps have been snuffed to glowing embers, you find yourself drawn to the storeroom again. Not for duty, not for hunger, just curiosity. The moon is bright, cold. The shelves are shadows. But in the far corner of the room, a crate you hadn't noticed before rests against the wall, its lid half loose and marked not in ink but in scratches. Deep, careful ones. A monk once told you, if a bowl has no mark, it's still waiting for its story. So naturally, you investigate. Inside, 3 bowls. None are normal. The first is impossibly dark, blackened like burned copper but smooth as glass. When you lift it, it's heavier than it should be. Dense. You tap it lightly with a knuckle. It doesn't ring. It growls. A deep, subterranean hum that lingers in your chest like a secret. You set it down quickly. The sound fades slow, like breath retreating into stone. The second bowl is stranger still. Its metal is dappled with odd flecks, shiny, silvery, almost iridescent. The kind of finish no forge should naturally make. You run your finger along the rim. It's cold, colder than the air, colder than the stone floor. You circle it once with the old pine stick, and it sings, but the tone is shifting, not steady, like it's undecided, like wind through different caverns, changing pitch mid-note. You stare at it, then it stops, just stops. You exhale, slowly. The third bowl is small, plain, almost disappointingly so after the others. But when you lift it, you notice an engraving along the inside rim. Tiny, almost missed in the low light. It's a spiral drawn inward. You hum into the bowl. It hums back. Same tone, same note, perfect pitch match. You try again, a different hum. It follows, not loudly, but undeniably. You place all 3 back in the crate, carefully. Cover them again. You don't ask questions. Not now. But later, When you speak with the librarian monk, the one with the ink-stained teeth and suspicious memory for details, he tells you, "Ah, the meteor bowls." You blink. They say the metal came from a star, brought by traders, gifted by accident, mistaken for iron. Didn't forge well. Too brittle. Too strange. But when alloyed into bowls, different things happened. He shrugs. Some say they're holy. Others say cursed. I say they're just bowls, hungry for the right hands. Historians still argue whether any real meteor metal was ever used in Tibetan singing bowls. A few suspect trace amounts in specific alloys, especially from regions near known impact sites. But tests are rare, and the monks don't test. They listen, and they remember. Even the strange ones. Especially the strange ones. That night, you dream of stars falling like bells, and a bowl that sings back a note no one remembers writing. Section 18. The next morning, while dew still clings to the monastery's flagstones and birds are just starting to complain about the light, you join a group of monks tasked with sweeping the inner temple. Not the main chanting hall, but the older structure behind it. Lower, darker, more resonant. It's here you begin to understand how much the architecture matters. The walls are stone, but not just any stone. They were chosen for sound. Laid in a pattern meant not only to support the roof, but to echo. Not a shout, but a breath. Not music, but memory. You sweep slowly, your straw broom whispering along the floor. The monk beside you is humming, a low, steady drone. Not loud, just enough to test the air. And the walls answer. Not in words, not even in tone, but in texture. The space hums back. You've read about this. Later scholars called it resonant alignment, the idea that early temples weren't just built to house people but to shape sound. Every arch, every column, every recess acts like a tuning fork, a quiet amplifier. And in that context, singing bowls don't just echo, they thrive. A monk demonstrates. He takes a wide bowl from a shelf, places it in the center of the floor, and begins the slow, circular motion of the stick. The bowl sings, soft at first, then louder, and then the walls begin to join in. The sound bounces, cleanly, evenly. It doesn't crash. It glides. You hear overtones, faint harmonics. The sound changes as you move. In one corner, it's brighter. In another, darker. Behind a pillar, you catch a whispery echo like distant breath. The bowl isn't making music anymore. The room is. Monks believe that architecture could act as an extension of practice. That sound, properly framed, could become sacred, not because it's divine, but because it reminds you of silence. Some even suggest the temples were tuned. That stones were tested, placed, adjusted until the room hummed in harmony with a single bowl's tone. An impossible idea, perhaps, but standing here now, you believe it. Another monk sets a second bowl beside the first, begins to play it. The sounds merge, not as a chord, but as a conversation. Two notes overlapping, two voices aligning. A few younger monks walk slowly around the room, stopping at certain stones, leaning in to listen. One of them says softly, "This corner is sad." No one laughs. You sweep in silence for another hour. The dust rises gently in the light shafts from the small clerestory windows. The bowls have gone quiet again, but the walls still remember. Later, outside, you sit on a bench carved from old beams. The wood creaks faintly beneath you. You wonder what would happen if you pressed a bowl to this bench. What would it say? Because now you know, bowls don't sing in isolation. They're shaped by air, by stone, by context. And in the right space, they become more than objects. They become architecture, temporary buildings of breath and sound, raised one circle at a time. Section 19. By late afternoon, when the sun drapes the monastery in soft gold and the shadows lengthen like lazy cats, you're invited to witness something rarely shown to outsiders. The dusk ritual known simply as the bowl call. It isn't announced. There's no bell or trumpet. It begins when the air cools and the sky shifts from blue to bruised violet. One by one, monks gather in the outer courtyard. Each carries a singing bowl, some old, some cracked, some gleaming like polished moons. You're given one too. Yours is shallow, light, warm from the sun where it sat all day. You cradle it like a question. The monks form a loose circle. No one speaks. The ritual begins not with sound, but with breath. One deep inhale, and then, one by one, the bowls begin to sing. Not together, not in time, but in turn, a slow bloom of tones, each rising like steam from the stone floor, floating into the air, overlapping gently, fading just as the next one begins. The effect is otherworldly. There's no melody, no harmony, just layers, tone upon tone, hum upon hum. The courtyard fills with sound. Not loud, never loud, but rich, alive. The air vibrates. You feel it on your skin, in your ribs, behind your eyes. You play your bowl, tentatively at first. It sings, a clear note, light but full, like the edge of sleep. You stop, let it fade. The next monk picks up, and so it goes, around and around. No order, just intuition. Historians who hear of this ritual often write it off as performance, as a simple acoustic meditation. But they miss something. This isn't for the audience. It's for the day. The monks say each sunset carries echoes from the hours before. That if you don't release those sounds, they'll cling to the walls, linger in your dreams, disrupt the silence of tomorrow. So they ring them out, gently, lovingly, like brushing dust from the corners of the sky. The ritual lasts as long as it needs to. Sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes an hour. Tonight, it feels like forever. And then, all at once, the sound stops. The bowls rest, and the world holds its breath. No clapping, no chant, just a stillness so deep it might hum on its own. The monks bow, one by one, and leave. You remain, your bowl in your lap, your ears still ringing, not from volume but from presence. You touch the rim. It doesn't sing, but it remembers. And so do you. Section 20. The next morning, you rise early again, now more from habit than instruction. The rhythm of the monastery has seeped into your bones. You wake with the light, eat with the bell, breathe between the sounds. You walk slower now. Your footsteps are quieter. Even your thoughts have taken on the shape of circles. Today, you're accompanying one of the senior monks on a journey to a market town several valleys away. Not for trade, but for demonstration. You don't carry food. You carry bowls, wrapped in cloth, nestled in baskets, balanced carefully on a small handcart. The path down the mountains is familiar, goat paths and stone steps, pine shade and yak bell echoes, but this time, your destination isn't quiet. It's bustling. You arrive at midday, entering a plaza alive with movement, merchants shouting prices, children running barefoot, music tumbling from reed flutes and slap drums. And amid it all, a small woven tent where the monk sets down the cart. Within minutes, curious faces gather, and the monk begins. He doesn't speak much, doesn't perform. He simply unwraps a bowl, sets it on a folded cloth, and begins to play. Soft circles, slow breath. The bowl sings. The crowd stills. Another bowl, another note, a deeper tone this time, thick and rich like dark tea. A hush spreads, and then a question from a woman in the crowd. Is it true these bowls are made from fallen stars? The monk just smiles and keeps playing. A man asks if they heal sickness. A child asks if they can make the wind stop. Another asks if they can bring dreams. The monk says only this. They help us listen. You're asked to play. You choose a smaller bowl, one you've grown fond of. Its tone is shy but steady. You circle the rim. The sound is clear. You stop. Someone in the crowd closes their eyes. The demonstration becomes something else. People begin to share stories. My grandmother used a bowl like that to wash my hair. My uncle swore the bowl would hum if he lied while touching it. I once saw a bowl stop a dog from barking. The monk lets them talk. Because this, too, is part of the spread. Not through conquest, not through conversion, but through curiosity. By the end of the day, a few bowls are gone, gifted, never sold. The monk doesn't charge. He only asks that they be treated as more than tools, more than dishes, more than relics. He asks that they be heard. You make the walk back to the monastery at dusk. The cart is lighter, the air is cool, and the path feels less like a route and more like a thread tying one world to another. The bowls you carried today may never return, but their tones, already ringing in new kitchens, new laps, new silences. Because that's what these bowls do. They travel not as goods, but as invitations. To pause, to listen, to feel sound when it no longer speaks. Section 21. Back at the monastery, a curious ripple has arrived from far away, not by courier, but by word of foot travelers and lowland traders. Westerners are coming. Not many, just a trickle, but they're bringing questions, and coins, and, inevitably, confusion. You see the first of them a few days later, two figures dressed in thick woven shawls that look suspiciously like table runners, carrying bags full of notebooks, cameras, and assumptions. They're here for healing, and they've heard about the bowls that cure the body with vibrations. A monk greets them, patient as a stone. He shows them the bowls, demonstrates the tone, explains, gently, that the bowls are not magic. They are tools, companions, echoes, not solutions. But already, the travelers are nodding, half listening, preparing to misremember everything he says. You watch as one of them picks up a bowl the size of a dinner plate and strikes it with a padded mallet like it's a gong. The sound is beautiful, yes, but abrupt, unintended, a little aggressive. The monk doesn't flinch, but you do. They ask how many bowls they can buy. He smiles. None. But we'll pay. They're not for sale. The bowl they struck still hums softly in the corner. You hear it. The monk hears it. But they don't. It's not their fault. They're looking for something real. They've just mistaken the sound for the practice. This isn't new. Decades later, people across oceans will host sound baths. They'll lie on yoga mats while someone swirls mallets around imported bowls, layering tone over tone like musical incense. It will be soothing, sometimes moving, occasionally beautiful. But it won't be this. It won't be soup and silence. It won't be lentils in brass bowls and fasting mornings and the afternote of a single hum at dawn. The bowls will become divorced from their kitchens, their stillness, their context, and yet they will still ring. And that, the monks say, is enough, because even a misused bell still holds the potential to teach. Later, one of the visitors asks to record the tones. The monk agrees, but instead of a studio-quality microphone, he holds the recorder in his palm and whispers, "Don't chase the sound. Let it come to you." The recording ends up crackly, unclear, filled with wind and background coughs and a distant chicken. But when played back, the bowl still hums, quietly, faithfully, like it always has. You help pack the visitors' bags the next morning. One of them thanks you. The other tries to gift you a bracelet made from ethically recycled plastic. You decline. When they leave, the courtyard feels a little lighter, but not emptier. The bowls remain, still on their shelves, still in their places, still singing when asked with care. Because while some may come to extract, the bowls, they wait, they hum, they endure. Section 22. It's a rainy afternoon now, the kind that turns stone steps into slick poems and makes the courtyard smell like wet bark and old copper. You're in the side hall with a few monks working on something experimental, fusion bowls. Not of metal, of method. Today's question: what happens when you blend traditions? One monk brings in a bowl from a nearby village, Japanese in style, shallow and white, designed for miso soup. It's porcelain, not metal. Delicate, glossy. Another brings in a Chinese rice bowl, thicker, blue-glazed, chipped from years of use. And then, one by one, monks place their standard singing bowls beside them. You line them up. 3 cultures, 3 functions, same shape, different intent. A monk begins circling his traditional bronze bowl. The sound rises as expected, warm, long, familiar. Then he lifts the Japanese bowl, carefully, reverently, and tries the same motion. No hum, just a whisper of friction. The Chinese bowl fares a little better. Its glaze provides resistance, and for a brief second, you almost hear a tone. But not quite. Then, in a moment of quiet mischief, one monk pours miso soup into a small singing bowl. "Can you meditate with miso?" he asks. You all laugh, but he's serious. He stirs, slowly, and the bowl sings, softly, strangely, as if surprised. There's debate then. Could the liquid inside change the vibration? Does warmth matter? Does salt disrupt or enhance? You test it. Boiling water. A sharper tone. Chilled water. Flatter. Tea with milk. Unpredictable. One monk posits a theory. It's not the liquid. It's the listening. You sit with that for a while. A theory as absurd as it is true. By late afternoon, the table is cluttered with hybrid attempts. Bowls half glazed in clay, one lined with leather, another rimmed in wax. Some buzz. Some moan. One makes a sound, so low it seems to disappear into the floor. It's not about success anymore. It's about asking, what else can sing? This is how traditions evolve, not by abandoning their roots, but by listening to everything else. You sip the last of the miso. Look into the bowl. It doesn't sing anymore, but it's warm, and maybe that's enough. Section 23. Another cleaning day arrives, but this time it's different. You're not scrubbing the floor or polishing copper. Today's task is quieter, stranger. You're washing the echoes. It begins with the bowls, as always, but not the ones in the kitchens or chanting halls. These are from the storage loft, rarely touched, reserved for rituals so infrequent that no one can quite agree when they last sang. They're dusty, dull. One is wrapped in 3 layers of cloth, marked only with a faded character that means still. Your job is to clean them, not just outside, inside. The monk supervising you is precise. The inside of a bowl is where it holds the world, he says. The outside just keeps it in, so you clean. With hot water scented faintly of pine and lemongrass. With cloths worn soft as breath. One stroke clockwise, one counterclockwise. No scrubbing, just coaxing the quiet back to the surface. You don't speak. No one does. This isn't physical labor. It's listening in motion. And as you work, something odd happens. You hear something. Not sound, not memory, but tone. Like a bell you almost remember. One bowl, particularly large and tarnished, begins to sing under your fingers, not audibly but in feeling. The rim shivers, faintly as you wipe it. You glance up. The monk across from you is nodding as if to say, yes, that one remembers. Because here's the secret no one writes down. Some bowls store sound. Not in science, but in sensation. Like rooms that echo long after the guests leave. Some monks believe a well-used bowl contains all the meals, chants, and silences ever poured into it. Cleaning it is not erasure. It's reverence. You begin to notice patterns. Bowls cleaned after fasting days feel warmer. Ones used during morning rites hold a kind of soft reluctance, as if they'd rather not ring again. The oldest ones, quiet, not silent, resting. The term for this practice, roughly translated, is returning the echo. You're not polishing. You're preparing the bowl to receive new silence. And there's a ritual, too. Once a bowl is cleaned, it must be placed mouth down beside a window until sunset, to air out the old breath. You finish your last bowl. Set it carefully on the sill. Watch the sky color it with late-day gold. And in that moment, you understand something else. The monks don't just keep bowls clean. They keep stillness clean. Because silence, too, gets dusty. And someone has to sweep it. Section 24. The sun is setting behind a curtain of cloud. The monastery is wrapped in the soft hush of twilight, the space between bell and bowl, between sound and sleep. Tonight, you're assigned to watch duty, not security, but silence. A ritual, so old it no longer has a name. The task, sit with the bowls. Just sit. You're in the side hall, where the older, less used bowls rest on a long wooden bench, each turned mouth down, each holding a circle of shadow underneath. You sit cross-legged before them, your back against the cool wall, a wool shawl across your knees. The light fades, and you wait. The idea is simple. Stillness guards stillness. Each bowl must be accompanied until moonrise. No ringing, no touching, just presence. Why? Because silence is not passive. It's a space, a container, a room with shape and weight. And if no one is there to honor it, it goes sour, turns brittle, starts to echo the wrong things. So you sit. For the first hour, your thoughts rebel. Your leg itches. Your nose invents problems. Your mind replays every bowl's tone you've heard this week. But then something shifts. You stop thinking. You start hearing. The wind outside is soft. A distant bell on a yak's neck clinks once. Somewhere, a monk coughs. But in here, nothing moves. And that's when you hear it, the faintest shimmer. Not from your body, not from the wind, from the bowls, or perhaps from between them. It's not music, it's not resonance, it's memory. These bowls, untouched, still speak. Not with tones, but with presence. They hum in the air like old stories in a closed book. Monks say some bowls ghost ring. Not because they're struck, but because they've been listened to for so long that the silence around them has learned how to sound. You glance at the moon, just now breaking free of the clouds. Your shift is over. You rise carefully, bow to the bowls, and leave. They don't sing, but somehow you still hear them. Section 25. Your final morning in the monastery begins like the others. Early, quiet, chilled. But there's a softness in the air today, a kind of letting go. You're leaving soon. Not from duty, just moving on. And before you go, there's one last thing to do. The monk who first handed you a bowl on your arrival greets you at the courtyard. He doesn't say much, just nods toward the steps leading to the old shrine on the hill. You follow. The path is worn, mossy in places. As you climb, the wind grows louder, not fierce, just present, like it wants to walk beside you. At the top, a flat stone ledge, an old altar, and a single bowl resting in the sun. Your bowl, the one you used for meals, chants, miso experiments, and late-night listening. It's here to say goodbye. You kneel beside it. There's no ritual, no script. You just breathe. You reach for the wooden stick, slow and steady, and circle the rim. The tone rises, gentle, familiar, low. It's not the best note, not the purest, but it's yours. You let it ring, and fade, and then again, and again. You think of every bowl you've touched here. The cracked one in the corner, the children's shelf, the meteor hum of midnight. You think of the silence after soup, the stillness of fasting, the echo of empty air. And now, this final sound. You stop. You rest your hand on the rim. Warm from sun, cool underneath. It doesn't sing anymore. But neither do you. You rise. Leave the bowl in place. Walk back down the hill. Not toward a finish, but toward the rest of the world, where bowls still sing, even when no one knows what they're for. Where someone, someday, will pick one up and listen. Let's leave the mountain now. Let the air soften behind you. Let the stone paths blur. Let the sound of bowls drift backward into stillness. You've heard enough. Let your mind quiet. Let your chest loosen. Let the soft echo of everything you didn't understand fade into comfort, not confusion. You are no longer in the courtyard, no longer on duty. You've set the bowl down. You've let the sound fade. And now, you rest. Because the bowl doesn't need to sing for you to remember it. Its shape stays with you. Its silence stays with you. Even now, in your bed, your fingers remember the curve of brass. Your breath moves like a rim circling. Your thoughts slow into loops, soundless, weightless. You've left the monastery, but part of it came with you, the part that listens. So lie back, loosen your jaw, let your shoulders melt, let your belly rise. Let the notes you've carried this far dissolve into sleep. No chant, no bell, just the quiet you made by listening, and the stillness waiting patiently for your return. Because the bowl isn't gone, it's just resting, and so are you.